Hey, good afternoon, everyone. After you leave this session, I hope you're convinced that corporate responsibility professionals have a primary role to be effective change agents. Your key challenge is to build the credibility and forge the trusting relationships that make that change role possible. I believe that leading change is the future of our profession. As Ali said, I'm Bart Alexander with my own firm, Alexander & Associates. We support corporate responsibility professionals and teams to lead with intention and make meaningful internal and external connections that lead to positive and sustainable change. My personal background includes a couple of decades of leadership in the public sector and about the same in business, most recently doing that global Chief Corporate Responsibility Officer role for Molson Coors. I'm privileged today to be joined by three other corporate responsibility leaders. Doris Gonzalez is Director of Corporate Citizenship at IBM. She had a productive career in the public sector as well before she got to work at IBM. She worked for city and state agencies in media relations and community outreach. And in the 20 years since she's been at IBM, she's led innovative projects around education, health, and economic development. Thank you, Doris.
Thank you.
Crystal Adams is Corporate Responsibility Assistant Director at Crowe Horwath, LLP. Crystal and I worked together when she was doing corporate responsibility for Coors. She later worked for Quest and AT&T before joining her current firm almost 4 years ago. Her career has been marked by her ability to tie community and employee engagement into business results. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Nick Anderson specializes in corporate responsibility for MorganMyers, a strategic communication firm with clients along the farm-to-table spectrum. Nick brings expertise in corporate communication, social responsibility, and very importantly, brand purpose to MorganMyers clients. He's passionate about helping companies use their corporate voice to connect with consumers in a meaningful way. Today, we'll hear from each of our panelists about their current job and some of their remarkable successes that we always talk about at conferences like this. But I've asked them to also share how they learned what is required to succeed, perhaps by encountering stalemates or failures earlier in their careers. I think we can learn from each other throughout this conference as much from our failures as our successes. So I encourage you all to take some of the networking time to do that with each other. I'd like to begin by just setting some context. Like this panel is today, corporate responsibility professionals are on the main stage in their companies, holding key internal and external stakeholder relationships that can drive economic, social, and environmental results. But it hasn't always been this way. If we go back to the age of the great industrialists, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, these industrialists realized, particularly later in their lives, that they had actually taken a lot away from employees and the environment. And they felt a social or even a religious obligation to give back. We have wonderful foundations as a result, many located in the city. This give-back philosophy became the corporate citizenship movement, active philanthropic and community relations outreach programs across corporate America. But frustration grew with checkbook philanthropy, no return on investment, just giving money away. Milton Friedman said, if you want to give your money away as a company, give your own money away as an officer of that company. Don't take shareholders' money and give it away. So there was a drive in the philanthropy world to create a transaction. I'll give you this, you'll give me that. We get a fair exchange. But that was frustrating as well. And the idea of partnerships began to grow into the corporate citizenship movement. Mutual investments of the company and external stakeholders in a project that grows returns for both parties. True value creation, cycles of value creation. And as everyone in this room knows, today corporate responsibility goes well beyond projects like these to being part of business strategy, changing the business itself to determine how basic operations affect people, communities, and the planet. Today's companies are being challenged to find a purpose that serves all their stakeholders and makes the world a better place, as well as growing shareholder returns. Some commentators have described this change as the new public role of the private sector. And that's certainly true in developing countries where just the institutional capacity of governments is so slim. Companies play a determinant role in health, education, and general welfare of the communities in which they operate. But this is becoming increasingly true in this country and other developed countries, where disruptive innovation in business and combined with government gridlock has limited government's regulatory and programmatic capacities. I believe that the CR profession has evolved and will continue to evolve to serve this new purpose. Of course, we must know about the substantive issues: ethics, human rights, sourcing, environmental health and safety, diversity, inequality, regulation, standards, and the changing values of our customers. We're also being challenged to be experts in making positive change in our communities and in the wider world, and we're asked to do so in environments which may talk the talk, but may be reluctant to make the needed investments to walk the walk. So with that background, let me just pause for a second and ask each of our panelists. And I'll start with Crystal on this.
Okay.
Crystal, how did you get to your current job? And what accomplishments in your job make you most proud?
Well, you know, I've had my entire professional career in the corporate responsibility place. And I attribute that to the best one-line answer I've ever given. I was a basketball player in college, as some of you guys didn't notice when I towered over you in the hallway. But a booster came up to me and said, "Crystal, what are you going to do after you graduate?" And all I knew about this booster was that he was very involved in the community. He knew all of the grassroots leaders, all the community leaders. He was involved with the political leaders. He was very, well, I'll be honest with you, as an athlete, he also had the best seats to all the sporting events. That appealed to me. But as most seniors about to graduate college, I had no idea what I was going to do for a career. And my best one-line answer to this question was, "I don't know, John, why don't you hire me?" And the truth is he did. He actually created an internship for me. That was when I was at Crowe's Brewing Company. I worked there for, I won't tell my age, for several years. And then because of that, relationships grew where I had opportunities at other organizations. I developed a relationship with a woman who was very involved in telecom. She ended up getting a VP job at Quest Communications. The department had been gutted and kind of restarted, so she brought me on board. After that, because of my relationships I had in telecom, I had the opportunity to do some consulting work with AT&T on some of their community engagement projects. And the funny thing is the job that I have now is the first time I've ever had a job that a relationship didn't get it for me. I actually applied like a regular person online, so that was kind of new for me. But when I look back and I think of the differences now is before I was always in kind of a business to consumer environment, and now for the first time with this accounting company, I'm in a business to business environment, which is very different. But my job is still very much the same. So in addition to us, worrying about our look and how clients feel about us, one of the things that's more important, and one of the things I really focus on is how do I make sure that people of Crowe know about our commitment to the community, and how can they be just as committed, and how can I get them engaged in that? And so my real job is helping us win the war for talent. That's a real place where I focus my energy, is helping us win the war for talent. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of when I look at my career is that I feel like through my job, I'm a do-gooder at heart. I think that I've been very privileged to spend my entire career helping both the businesses I've worked for and the people that work for me to show their best selves all the time.
Nick, how about you?
Well, this is a pleasant surprise, actually. I also played basketball in college. I don't know if you saw, we might be the two tallest people here. But when I was in school, actually not too long ago, and my early work experience, I made a realization that I'm sure all of you guys did too. The power of business and its talent and resources and scalability put it in a unique position to solve social problems better than any other institutions. And so I saw that opportunity and wanted to dedicate my career to that. And some advice that I was given was, in order to get into this industry, you need experience in nonprofits, in-house corporate, and agency experience. So right out of school, I went and got all that experience. I worked for Habitat for Humanity, I worked for State Farm, and I worked for Weber Shandwick. And then transitioned into the job I have now, where I can specialize in CSR. And my main focus in my job is to help my clients through the landscape of CSR. What's their program going to look like? How to navigate the internal and external pitfalls that come with that. And also what I think is most important is effectively communicating that to consumers. Because when we can create a consumer demand for this type of business, then the sky's the limit for us. As far as accomplishments that I'm proud of, I would definitely say at this job, being able to help Kraft Heinz as a newly merged company decide what their CSR programs are going to look like, and how all that's going to look. And then, to be honest, just getting to this point, this is not an easy field to get into. It's not something that people will readily support. It's something that you have to consistently justify over time. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So those are probably my two proudest accomplishments.
Doris?
Hi, it's really great to be here. I would say that I stumbled into this job in corporate philanthropy because, like what Crystal said, I am a do-gooder at heart. And before coming to IBM, I was a professional hire and already had 14 years of experience in the in the public sector. So I worked in the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the New York City Department of Education. Back then it was known as the Board of Ed. And then went on to work at the School Construction Authority, always in the capacity of either media or in community relations. And I'll tell you that one of the experiences that I had on my first week at the job in the School Construction Authority was when, in the 90s, the asbestos crisis hit the schools, and we had to, do everything we could to fix where we could the schools so that schools would open. That was like, it was a nightmare and yet a crash course on community work because you had to build trust. So when I came to IBM, really, I thought, as I had mentioned to Bart, I was going to be there a year. Let me get 1 year of private sector experience on my resume, then I could leave and do what I really want to do. And on December 16th, I'm going to be celebrating my 20th anniversary at IBM, all of it in corporate citizenship. And when people ask me, well, what kept you here? Why are you still here? And you're an anomaly at IBM. Usually IBM stands for I've been moved, because everybody goes, you have either different jobs or you have, you go to different countries, and all of that is great experience, of course. But for me, I feel like I'm representing the heart of the company, and I get to work with the most amazing people, the people and the projects. Those are the two main reasons why I've stayed at IBM. Ginny Rometty, our CEO, is absolutely supportive, and we don't even have to brief her about what we do in corporate philanthropy at IBM because she's heavily engaged in every single one of our programs, knows them very well. A lot of that has to do with the fact that as the profession has changed over the years, over the decades, so has the work that we have to do. I mean, the way that you can be sustainable within a company, within a corporation, is you have to align your corporate philosophy and corporate philanthropy with the business. Otherwise, if there is that disconnect, you're not going to be sustainable. You're not going to be around too long. IBM happens to have more than 105-year history, and throughout the beginning of IBM's history, giving back to the community was essential. For me, I have so many proud moments, but I would say that one of my proudest moments at IBM was that I was at the ground floor of the creation of PTech, which is a grades 9 to 14 education model that brings businesses, higher education, and the education departments to create a school where kids within a 6-year, up to a 6-year period, will graduate with a free associate's degree in computer information systems or electrical and mechanical engineering, and they are first in line for jobs at IBM. We started with one school in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. That first cohort, we were able to get 6 graduates in 4 years. So they earned their associate's degree and high school degree in 4 years. And of the 6 who graduated early, IBM hired 3 of them. 3 others chose to continue onto higher education, to continue their studies in higher education. For me, that connected me back to my love, which is public education. I'm a product of the public schools here in New York City. I went to CUNY schools for higher education. And so again, it was this amazing program that started in 2011 in one school. Now we're in 40 schools, including Australia. We, 2 weeks ago, opened another school in Morocco and announced another school in Morocco. It opens in next September. But, you know, when you have that connection of, you know, we want the jobs that these students are getting prepared for. So that's why we're hiring them. That's why this program is very near and dear to my heart, and I love it.
All impressive. You're all in situations where your companies are giving you that responsibility, that authorization to do something really effective. So I'm going to start with Crystal again. I don't know why I'm picking on you. I've known you the longest.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you learn to be effective? What failures, what challenges did you have in your life and in your career that you think are really important now in terms of the lessons you learned?
Well, I'd love to say I don't have any. But the truth is, you know, I think back early on in my career, and there was one thing that I really think just really got that learning curve going. I had a situation when I had recently started at Coors, and I was given the task of leading this issue to bring some technology into the way we did some things with corporate social responsibility. And being the youngest person in the department, you know, I was kind of the most tech savvy, so our director brought me in to do this. And so, you know, I'm kind of proud. This is my first, you know, my first big gig, right? And I'm putting everything together, and I'm working hand in hand with our director to make this happen. We get everything ready to do this presentation, and we bring in several different people from different departments to come in and, you know, and hear this wonderful presentation about, you know, all this brilliant work I've done. And one of the directors came in and completely torpedoed it from the beginning of the presentation. And we were like so shocked and amazed and stunned at the whole thing that the meeting was adjourned. And so it's kind of one of those go back to the drawing boards. Now, I'll be honest, and I went to a corner, had to lick my wounds a little bit because that one beat me up. But I think the thing that I really learned the most from that experience was that the meeting before the meeting is the most important meeting. And what I mean by that is, you know, when you look at corporate social responsibility, we should be the most integrated people within any company. You know, we should know everybody, we should know all the players, we should know the temperature. And I thought just because I was working with my director, you know, that I'm blessed, all is well. You know, he was holding my hand, this is all gonna be good. But the truth is, I should have known people's thoughts and concerns before we ever got to that meeting. You know, I should have known the pulse of my stakeholders, and I just did not. And I can say now that that has never been an issue since. I learned from my mistake, and the biggest thing I really learned is not to work in a silo, and how to get everybody involved and how relationships mean everything.
And you can lead in that way without being the director. You can do that no matter what role you're in.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I think the other quick thing that I learned is that sometimes other people's political landmines can take you out too. That's another situation completely. But I think that was the biggest thing was, you know, there's a lot of pre-work I could have done and should have done. And I just didn't know any better. I thought I was, you know, had the blessings of one, and so it was all good. But learned from that.
Doris, how about you?
I would say that for me, initially, I became an executive 4 years ago. And I would say that before that, one of the challenges that I faced was that I felt like I had to do everything myself. You know, in order to be successful, I would bring in projects within budget, all of the goals were reached, etc. But I would say one of the things that I learned is raise your hand when you need help. You're not, you know, it's really important to bring in ideas from other team members. I also learned that, don't be afraid to try something new, even if you think you're going to fail. I mean, now I tell my 10-year-old daughter, did you fail at school today? Yay! Let's figure out how that happened. And you do learn from those failures. You haven't had that problem again. And so I would say, for me, the challenge is, it's really important to have don't think you can do it all. Raise your hand and make sure that you can get help. Build that consensus, right? Just like your experience. And then don't be afraid to fail, because you don't know whether those failures are going to take you to your next opportunity. And also, when you raise your hand and volunteer, make sure that you're getting noticed. It's important for you to present your project, but at the same time, if, it's like that tree falling in the woods, if nobody's around and knows what you're doing, that's not that great. So I would say it's really just that important to be able to, collaborate and, challenge yourself.
Change work is always experimental.
Mm-hmm.
Some experiments blow up.
Yeah.
Some just simmer away and go away. But if you aren't willing to try experiments, you don't learn.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, how about you?
I would think back to my earlier days at State Farm when I was probably only about 6'8" tall. I was working in the marketing department, and I found myself in a lot more corporate affairs meetings just because I liked the CSR initiatives that State Farm was doing. And I remember being particularly inspired after a meeting, going back to my marketing manager and saying, why aren't we communicating all the good work that State Farm's doing in the community as a way to differentiate itself? And his world was so different. He says, Nick, that's all well and good, but how does that translate to auto policy acquisition or retention? And so what I learned in that situation is that justifying the work that we do looks completely different to any set of people. And I was also just kind of convicted by that too, that this isn't something that makes sense to everybody like it does to us. And seeing that this consumer-facing opportunity or this brand-building opportunity, I think is another big thing I learned from that meeting.
I think it's a really tough one for those of us who believe in being authentic, want to bring our whole selves there, and realizing that we have to be chameleons sometime to kind of come in and get into someone else's world. I heard somebody at a conference recently call it radical empathy, to really understand who we're dealing with and where they're coming from, and bring ourselves to that at a rate that they can manage and they can accept. It's a tough thing to do. I remember in my career early on, I was in a political world, but I was in sort of a bureaucratic position. I kept thinking, this politics is getting in the way of the real world. The work is here. I want to get the work done. I realized politics was what it was about. It was about building the coalitions that would actually sustain the work into the future. We have a few minutes right now to ask some questions from the audience. Ali, if we've got a mic somewhere. I'd ask people to please keep your questions brief because we are on a really tight time frame, and I know the conference is running a few minutes behind at this point. But we want to hear what's on your mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. I was wondering if maybe you could speak to a little bit how you sort of sold initiatives to senior leadership and how you moved the ROI out to make it your back.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, what I mentioned earlier about how do you make that connection between I'll talk about IBM, what IBM is doing as a business. So when we present programs to the senior leadership, it has to absolutely be aligned with the business. IBM is a cloud and technology solutions company. If we're going to say, oh, we want to sponsor a dinner, who cares, right? And as Bart said earlier, we've gone away from checkbook philanthropy. It has to be about how are we using our best talent, our best technology to solve a real specific issue, whether it's health, which we're doing now with a grant program that we just kicked off, Watson Health, whether we're taking products that we, like Lumix, et cetera, to try to get students to learn more about coding and et cetera. So I think it's really important when you're presenting something that it's absolutely aligned to the business, and then you can demonstrate, obviously, how that's going to bring returns back to the company, whether it's in goodwill or through real results. Some of those results could be in, who we're hiring and how diverse we've become in terms of our hiring. So I think it's really important that be aligned.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I can. I think demonstrating ROI, again, means something different to any different person. And I know we have clients who want to see ROI couched as a reputational risk assessment. What happens if I don't do this? Where am I vulnerable? And then we also have clients who want to see something like this and the sales impact it might have. Is this sort of thing going to move the needle on sales? I'd say those are probably the two big things that we see, but it's always a challenge, and it's always a case-by-case basis.
The only thing I would add is I work for an accounting company, so we count everything. That's it. You just find those outcomes and measures you can do and show them solid numbers. I think lots of times, like someone else mentioned, I think sometimes the executives don't really see it the way we do. They don't really view it the way we do, but they understand numbers. And so you just find and track everything you can.
And can I just say that sometimes it's something that, may not be measurable, but has a lasting impact. So when we have programs like Smarter Cities Challenge, where we bring a team of IBM executives to work to address a specific issue in a city, we'll invite clients, right, to be part of that team. So what are we doing with that? We're giving those clients a different lens through which to see IBM and what we're doing with our technology. We're not just selling, and so that's not palatable, but I think it's very powerful.
The question, yep, in that.
So I wanted to ask a question about, driving the future of the corporate responsibility profession. So the figure right now is that about 88% of the students that are in college right now want to work on sustainability issues after they graduate. And we all know that sustainability positions are not entry level. And so I wanted to ask some of the ideas and strategies that you can give folks in the room of how to engage entry-level hires to keep that passion and excitement, but kind of encourage them to think of how they can work on sustainability either in entry-level roles and move into CR-type positions, or ways that we can keep that passion going after they graduate and enter the workforce.
I'll share my initial thoughts on that. When you look at, as a firm, one of the things we really do is we work on our employee engagement. We have a lot of millennials. As an accounting firm, largest portion of our employees are millennials. And the biggest thing I think you really do is you get them involved in those types of activities. You get them involved in volunteerism early, but you help them to see both kind of the before and after effects of that. You get them involved in your philanthropy. You let them lead those committees. You let them find the volunteer projects. You fund the things that they're interested in. You do different things like that show that whole engagement factor to get them involved and get them, like you said, kind of tied in to keep that enthusiasm so that when they do get that experience under their belt, they'll start learning more of those types of opportunities and be able to take advantage of them when they're ready.
I would say that, we have someone from corporate citizenship talk to new hires at every one of these classes. So we make sure that we have somebody represented. So, and one of the things we do is to talk about our programs, and we have on-demand community, which is how we support skills-based volunteering. So maybe as an entry level, you're not going to be in a leadership position, but if you are able to access materials that we make readily available, activity kits that we make readily available to our employees who want to do volunteer work in schools, or they want to work in a nonprofit organization as in terms of a volunteer project. So we give the resources so that you could take on that leadership role. You could bring together a team of IBM employees to help support the work that you're doing with a nonprofit. I would also say that as part of our corporate service core program, which is based on the Peace Corps, we'll take IBM employees who have been with the company at least 3 years, and then they can apply to be part of a team that goes to developing countries and works with nonprofits on a very specific issue over a 4-week period. So one of the things that we've done is we've taken surveys of these employees, and by the way, these employees have told us that 93% have said that participating in Corporate Service Corps has given them leadership opportunities that they did not have before, and 90% of them said, I'm really proud to work for this company. So you're building this cadre of employees who, by the way, we then use at events or when we go out to do community events. They're the ones that are front and center, and they're speaking about our programs to others in the community.
And I'd only add that if we believe that corporate responsibility is not really a function of a company that can be put into a silo, into a department, if we believe that our jobs are to be the leaders of change, then part of that change has to be that everybody in any job can see a way in which they can contribute to improving the social and environmental outcomes as well as the financial outcomes. The CFOs in companies expect everybody to reduce cash use, meet budget targets. We can have that same expectation of every employee, including entry-level employees in our companies. We have time maybe for one last question.
Hello. I'd just like to agree with Doris. As a former Peace Corps volunteer many years ago, there's something about going overseas, nearly dying 4 times, working with the community that changes you. And I think if you meet any former Peace Corps volunteer, it really does change you. And as an alumni of PricewaterhouseCoopers, I see some of them they have a program that they go to Belize. And when you volunteer and when you see how fortunate we are here in the United States and helping people, it really does make a difference. It just changes you. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
In the time we have left, let me just ask each panelist if you would share just one nugget of advice you would give to this group on how they can be effective in their roles. What would be your one piece of advice? Nick, do you mind starting?
I have a lot of advice, but to pick one, I would say make sure we continue to have a fail-forward mentality. Take ideas from anywhere and make sure whoever's got the idea is justifying it, but just continue to take innovative risks in this space because that's where the best ideas are born.
I think I would build on that a little bit, and because I agree, innovation is key. And I think the biggest thing is, we are so, in a lot of ways, when you look at corporate social responsibility as a whole, we're really pretty in an infancy stage in so many ways. So there's so much opportunity for creativity. And just because something works for someone else doesn't mean you have to do it that way. Really look at your stakeholders, both internally and externally, and just white paper it and come up with something new. It may be similar to what someone else already does, but also you have so many great opportunities to come up with something just new that can really differentiate you from everybody else.
We didn't get a chance to talk a lot about the importance of building relationships and both internal and external. And one of the things that has helped me from the beginning of my career, not just at IBM, is that I've established a board of mentors, both from within the company that I would currently be working as well as externally, because then you get a different perspective. So for me, it's so important to have a board of mentors from different fields who could help you plan your career. You never know where it's going to lead you. I never thought I was going to be in corporate philanthropy, but here I am. And so I would say that for me has been essential and allowed me to literally not have to look for a job in the 34 years that I've been working, which hopefully I'll keep working. So I would say that, don't underestimate the value of relationships and, building those very important connections.
Just to wrap this up, the world out there is full of some pretty amazing challenges for which there are no easy answers. Things like climate change, inequality, migration, water and something that's kind of on all of our minds in this country right now, just trusting each other, just trusting each other. And I do believe that this profession can energize people in the companies and outside our companies, to be innovative problem solvers, which will generate returns not only to shareholders, but also to the other stakeholders. And maybe we can envision a little yin and yang, and on one side is all the business case and all the metrics, which are so important, and the other side would be trusting relationships. It's kind of like in real estate is location, location, location. I would say in corporate responsibility, it's relationships, relationships, relationships. Hey, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. It was great. Great title.